What's more dangerous than an enemy? A false hero. Imagine this. Your house is on fire. Panicked, you search for help. Then someone arrives carrying a hose, saving you from the flames. You feel grateful, relieved, maybe even indebted to them. But there's one thing you don't know. They're the one who started the fire. This is the most dangerous face of corruption. Those who create problems, then show up as saviors. They rob people in broad daylight, then throw them a scrap of bread and say, "Look, we care." They make things worse, then bring solutions they designed themselves. We often ask, why does the world never truly improve? Why does poverty persist even though trillions have been spent to end it? Why do conflicts never cease despite endless promises of peace? The answer is simple. Someone benefits from keeping the problems alive. This isn't a wild theory, this isn't paranoia, this is a pattern that has existed throughout history. From ancient empires to modern nations, from dictatorships to democracies, the cycle remains the same. In this video, we'll break down the mechanisms behind this phenomenon. We'll explore history, dive into the philosophy behind it, and understand how to recognize these deceptions with clarity. Because only by seeing reality for what it is can we truly be free. Ready? Let's begin. Power is not maintained by force alone. It is upheld by illusion. Throughout history, rulers have understood one thing. People do not rebel against those they believe are helping them. So, the most effective way to control a population is not through fear but through deception. This strategy is ancient. The Roman Empire used a simple formula: bread and circuses. Keep the masses entertained and barely fed, and they won't notice their chains. But it goes even deeper. In the medieval era, kings would tax their people into poverty, then build grand churches and castles to show their generosity. People suffered, but they were made to believe their suffering had a purpose, glorifying their rulers. Even the French Revolution, which promised liberty, was manipulated. Chaos was engineered, and when people begged for order, Napoleon rose as a hero, only to crown himself emperor. The same oppression, in a different form. This isn't just history, it's human psychology. Philosopher Georg Hegel described a process called the Hegelian dialectic. Problem. A crisis is created. Reaction. People panic and demand a solution. Solution. The same people who created the crisis step in to fix it, gaining more power in the process. Look at any major event in history and you'll see this pattern. Governments declare war on enemies they helped create. Economic crashes require bailouts that only benefit the elite. Leaders strip away freedoms in the name of protection. It's a game, a cruel, brilliant game. And the worst part? Most people don't even see it. They believe the savior narrative because they've been conditioned to. Why has this knowledge been suppressed? Simple. If people understood this, they would stop looking to false heroes for salvation. They would see the patterns and reject the game. But those in power need the illusion to remain intact. That's why history is rewritten. Why propaganda is constant. Why those who speak the truth are labeled as lunatics or threats. Because once you see the trick, you can't be controlled, and that terrifies them. Power doesn't just sustain itself. It needs a story. And the most effective story is one where the villain and the hero are the same. Let's break it down. Step 1. Create the crisis. Every false hero needs a disaster to fix. If one doesn't exist, it must be manufactured. Governments fund and arm extremist groups, then declare war on them. Economic policies deliberately destabilize the market. Then the same politicians promise recovery. A health crisis emerges, and suddenly, the only solution comes from those who allowed it to spread in the first place. This is not incompetence. It's not bad luck. It's by design. Fear is the key ingredient. A population in fear is a population that begs for protection. And when people beg, they don't ask questions. Step 2. Control the narrative. Once the crisis is in motion, the next step is storytelling. The media, the institutions, the talking heads, all work together to shape the perception of reality. The enemy is painted as an external threat, never as a consequence of internal corruption. The problem is presented as sudden and unavoidable rather than deliberate and engineered. The solution is framed as the only option, and those who question it are labeled as extremists or conspiracy theorists. The public never sees the full picture. They see only what they are meant to see. Step 3. Present the savior. Now comes the grand performance. The same leaders who fueled the disaster emerge with the cure. They make speeches, pass laws, enforce new policies, always in the name of saving the people. They tighten control over speech to combat misinformation. They increase surveillance for security reasons. They demand more taxes to rebuild the economy. And the people cheer. They welcome their chains, believing them to be a shield. Step 4. Repeat the cycle. The beauty of this system is that it never ends. Once a government gains power through a crisis, they have no incentive to stop. They will keep creating new emergencies, justifying more control, and rewriting history to hide the deception. It's not about solving problems, it's about managing perception. And the people? They stay trapped, convinced they need their rulers to survive. But what happens when someone wakes up? That's what we'll explore next. The greatest trick of false heroism isn't just fooling people, it's making them defend their own oppressors. When someone points out the deception, what happens? They are silenced, ridiculed, branded as dangerous. Because once the illusion is questioned, the entire system is at risk. But let's go deeper. Why do people defend their manipulators? This is where psychology comes in. People don't just believe in these false heroes, they need to. Cognitive dissonance. If someone realizes they've been deceived for years, their mind resists. It's easier to stay in denial than to admit everything they trusted was a lie. Fear of uncertainty. If the government, the media, the institutions are corrupt, then who can they trust? Accepting this truth means stepping into the unknown, and most people would rather cling to a familiar lie. Stockholm Syndrome. When people feel powerless for too long, they develop loyalty to their captors. They rationalize the oppression, convincing themselves that it's for our own good. This is why people will defend the very system that exploits them. It's not logic, it's survival. To keep this illusion alive, false heroes rely on propaganda. But propaganda isn't just lies, it's selective truth. They will expose some corruption, but only of their rivals. They will give some freedom, but only under conditions they control. They will allow some dissent, but only if it never leads to real change. It's a balancing act. Keep the people distracted, divided, and always looking in the wrong direction. Every time people fall for this game, they lose something. Their freedom, traded for security that never truly comes. Their wealth, siphoned through taxes and inflation. Their time, spent chasing illusions instead of real solutions. And what happens when the cycle is complete? A new crisis begins. The same game plays out, and history repeats itself. But here's the real question. Can we break free? That's what we'll uncover next. Understanding the problem is one thing, escaping it is another. False heroes rely on blindness. Their power crumbles the moment people start thinking for themselves. So, how do we break free? Step 1. Question everything. Whenever a crisis happens, ask, who benefits? When a leader presents a solution, ask, did they help create the problem? When the media pushes a narrative, ask, what are they not telling us? Most people accept what they're told at face value. Don't be most people. Step 2. Follow the money. Power is rarely about ideology. It's about control. And control follows money. Who profits when a country goes to war? Who gains when inflation skyrockets? Who benefits from endless health crises? When you trace the money, you'll see the puppet masters behind the scenes. Step 3. Break free from the two-party illusion. One of the biggest tricks in politics is making people choose between two sides, left versus right, conservative versus liberal. But here's the truth. Both sides serve the same masters. They argue about surface-level issues but agree on the things that truly matter. More government control, more surveillance, more wealth in the hands of the elite. Real change doesn't come from choosing a different puppet. It comes from rejecting the entire theater. Step 4. Stop feeding the system. False heroes need your obedience. They need your compliance. So take it away. Support independent voices. The mainstream media is owned. Seek truth elsewhere. Build self-sufficiency. The less you rely on corrupt systems, the less they control you. Refuse to be divided. They want you fighting each other instead of seeing the real enemy. Don't play their game. Step 5. Spread awareness, but be smart about it. Not everyone is ready to see the truth. Some will fight to protect their illusion. That's okay. Focus on those who are starting to question. Plant seeds. Let them grow. Change doesn't happen overnight. But once enough people wake up, the illusion collapses. And that's what they fear the most. The greatest prison is the one you don't see. For centuries, false heroes have ruled through deception. They create fear, offer salvation and tighten their grip, while the people cheer. It's a cycle that repeats, generation after generation. But no illusion lasts forever. The moment people start questioning, cracks appear. The moment people stop obeying, the power shifts. The moment people see the game for what it is, the spell is broken. And that's why this knowledge is dangerous. They don't fear protests. They don't fear elections. They fear awareness. Because when enough people stop looking for heroes, when they realize that no leader is coming to save them, the system collapses under its own weight. So ask yourself, will you keep trusting the same hands that feed you poison? Will you keep believing in the saviors who profit from your suffering? Or will you step outside the illusion and see reality for what it truly is? Choice has always been yours. But once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. Now, what will you do with it?